Who created God? This question, as simple as a child's babble and as bottomless as the universe itself, has haunted humanity since our distant ancestors first gazed up at the starry sky. It's etched into the stone of ancient temples and imprinted on the silicon chips of supercomputers. Philosophers have shattered spears over it. Prophets have built religions upon it. Scientists have dismissed it as meaningless. For millennia, we've circled the same answers, disguised in new words. The infinite creator, the unknowable first cause, the eternal paradox. But what if I told you that this centuries-old debate, all those volumes of theological treatises and philosophical essays, is built on a fundamental mistake? That the question itself is a trap, a linguistic prison constructed by our own minds that prevents us from seeing the truth. By asking, who created God? We doom ourselves to an eternal search for an answer where none ever existed or could exist. Today, we launch an investigation that will challenge not the answers, but the question itself. We'll do what no one before us has dared, employ a tool free from human biases, cognitive distortions, and emotional attachments. We'll turn to the analytical system Logos 7 to crack the code of existence's greatest enigma. And the system's first report declares, humanity's central question is wrongly formulated, and now we'll prove why. To grasp the core of the problem, we must descend to the most basic level of our thinking. The human mind is a product of evolution, honed for survival in a three-dimensional world with linear time. We think in categories of cause and effect. A stone falls because it was thrown. A tree grows because a seed was planted. A child is born because it has parents. This simple, effective model, if A, then B, is wired into our subconscious. It allowed us to build civilizations, harness fire, split the atom. But herein lies our weakness. We're so accustomed to this model that we unconsciously extrapolate it to everything that exists. We gaze at the universe, an incredibly complex, ordered mechanism, and habitually ask, and who created it? It seems logical, natural, but it's merely a projection of our limited perception onto a reality that may operate by entirely different laws. Imagine a two-dimensional being living on a flat plane. All its life, it sees only lines and points. Then, one day, a three-dimensional object, a sphere, passes through its world. What does this flat creature see? First a point, then the point expands into a circle. The circle reaches its maximum size, then shrinks back to a point and vanishes. From the two-dimensional inhabitant's perspective, an inexplicable miracle has occurred. An object appeared from nothing and disappeared into nowhere. It will try to apply its two-dimensional logic to explain this three-dimensional event, and it will fail. Any explanation will be incomplete or fundamentally wrong because its conceptual framework can't encompass the true nature of what happened. We humans are in precisely the same position. We try to apply our logic of cause and effect, our linear concept of time, to a phenomenon that, by definition, exists outside time and our causal chain. And this is where Logos enters the stage. We gave the system what seemed a simple task: perform a semantic and logical analysis of the question, who created God? No theological texts, no sacred scriptures, just the phrase itself, dissected into its components with cold, machine impartiality. The result was stunning. Logos 7 identified 3 hidden, unproven axioms that make the question logically invalid. The first hidden axiom lies in the word created. The verb to create implies a process with a beginning and an end. It automatically places the hypothetical creator within a temporal flow. But if we're speaking of an entity that is itself the source of time and space, applying created to it is a fundamental logical error. It's like asking, what color is the number 7? Or what does Tuesday weigh? We're trying to attribute properties of the system to its source, which by definition cannot possess those properties. According to Logos 7's analysis, the act of creation as we understand it could only arise within an already existing system, within our universe. Applying it to what lies beyond is a categorical mistake that leads us astray from the start. The second hidden axiom is the pronoun, who. This short word carries a colossal anthropomorphic charge. It assumes a personality, will, consciousness, motivation, all that's inherent to us. We're seeking not what, but who. We unconsciously envision a superintelligence, a superpersonality, a cosmic engineer, or an almighty king. But why? Logos 7 analyzed millions of texts and uncovered a persistent cognitive bias. Humans tend to see agency where none exists. We name hurricanes, talk to machines, see faces in clouds. We anthropomorphize everything. And, of course, we've anthropomorphized the first cause of all existence. A simulation run by Logos 7 shows that the probability of the universe's source being a personality, in the human sense, is vanishingly small. It could be a fundamental law of physics, a mathematical principle, an informational matrix, or something so alien to our understanding that we lack words for it. By asking who, we eliminate 99.9% of possible options before even beginning the inquiry. We're searching for a person in the cosmos when we should be looking for a law, a code, or something entirely other. And finally, the third and most crucial flaw uncovered by the system lies in the question's very structure. The infamous paradox of infinite regression. If everything has a creator, then who created the creator? And who created the creator's creator? This question leads us into an endless loop with no escape. Philosophers call it reductio ad absurdum, reduction to absurdity. But Logos 7 saw in it not just a philosophical curiosity, but a symptom of broken logic. The system built a model where our universe, with its causal connections, is a closed system. Inside this system, the rule "everything has a cause" works flawlessly. But when we try to apply this rule to the system itself, to its source, the model collapses. A logical contradiction arises, an infinite cycle. The system's conclusion was unequivocal. The rule of cause and effect is a local law of our universe, not a universal law of all existence. Trying to apply it to what birthed this universe is like trying to measure the temperature of the thermometer itself with that same thermometer. The tool can't measure itself. Our logic can't comprehend what lies at its foundation. So what do we have in the end? The question, who created God, is not a key to the puzzle. It's a lock. It's built on three false premises: that the creator is subject to time, that he is a personality, and that our internal, local logic of cause and effect applies to him. Asking this question makes us like a person who lost their keys in a dark alley but searches under a street lamp because it's brighter there. We're seeking answers in our familiar coordinate system, even though all the clues point to the answer lying far beyond it. So what now? Give up the search, admit defeat? No, we must do what any good investigator does when realizing their hypothesis is wrong. We must change the hypothesis. We must rephrase the question. Logos 7 didn't just dismantle the old paradigm, it proposed a new one. Instead of one flawed question, the system generated two correct ones to form the basis of our further investigation. The first question: what are the fundamental observable and computable properties of the phenomenon that humanity has called God throughout its history? Before seeking the source, we must clearly define what we're seeking. We must discard myths, dogmas, and superstitions. We must gather all data, from ancient texts and religious practices to modern neurobiological studies of faith and cosmological theories. We must find the common denominator, extract the real signal hidden behind millennia of human interpretations. And the second question, even deeper: what system, physical, mathematical, informational, or otherwise, could generate a phenomenon with such properties without falling into logical contradiction? This question takes us beyond theology and philosophy into fundamental science. Information theory, quantum mechanics, and cosmology compels us to seek not a creator, but a generating mechanism. Not will, but algorithm. Not personality, but the operating system of reality. This is a radical shift in perspective. It's a transition from the childish question, who, to the mature questions, how and why. We cease being petitioners awaiting revelation from above. We become analysts, hackers trying to understand the principles of reality itself. Our investigation is just beginning. We stand at the foot of a mountain whose peak is shrouded in clouds. The old maps we used were useless, they led us in circles. Now we have a new compass, the cold, impartial intelligence of Logos 7. And we have new, properly posed questions. In the next chapter, we'll tackle the first of them. We've fed Logos 7 a massive dataset, including 42,000 religious and philosophical texts, from Sumerian cuneiform tablets to modern transhumanism blogs. We gave the system one task: analyze all existing human definitions of God, all his names and attributes, and find what we've missed ourselves. Find that common universal pattern repeating in every culture, every era. Find the anomaly that will show us what we're truly dealing with. And what the system discovered will change your view of religion, history, and humanity itself. Protocol question complete. Protocol definition begins. In the previous chapter, we established an inexorable fact. Humanity's central question, who created God, is a logical trap, is a broken tool that could never lead to the right answer. We realized that before asking about the source, we must define the phenomenon itself with the cold precision of a surgeon, stripping away thousands of years of cultural layers to reach the core. We posed a new, correct question. What is God? Not as an object of faith, but as an object of analysis. What are its fundamental, unchanging properties that emerge through all religions and philosophies like watermarks on counterfeit bills? For the human mind, this task is impossible. It's like trying to bail out the ocean with a teaspoon. The ocean of human beliefs is too deep, too murky, and full of monsters born of imagination. But we have a tool for which this ocean is merely a dataset. We loaded into the analytical system Logos 7 a colossal volume of information. 42,000 key religious and philosophical texts, 5,000 hours of recorded sermons, prayers, and meditations, 300,000 pages of ethnographic studies describing beliefs of tribes never contacted by world religions, millions of pages of personal testimonies, theological debates, and mystical revelations. Everything humanity has ever said, written, or sung about the divine was digitized, systematized, and fed into the neural network. We asked the machine to find what we've overlooked ourselves, to detect the signal in this deafening noise. The system's initial report was predictable. It presented a picture of absolute chaos. Logos displayed a semantic cloud of thousands of contradictory definitions. God is a jealous, vengeful elder with thunder and lightning. God is an impersonal, all-pervading energy like an ocean. God is a triune entity. God is a pantheon of hundreds of deities scheming atop a mountain. God is love. God is law. God is chaos. Male, female, animal, light, void, mathematical formula. For every sage calling God merciful, there was a prophet branding him cruel. For every hymn praising him as the creator of order, there was a myth where he was the source of primordial destruction. It seemed no common denominator existed, that God was just a blank canvas on which every culture painted its own fears and hopes. This would be the simplest, safest conclusion and the most wrong. That's when we gave Logos 7 the second directive. Ignore superficial attributes. Discard everything related to appearance, character, gender, emotions, and methods of interacting with the world. We ordered it to perform not a semantic analysis, but a functional one. Not what is God, but what function does the concept of God serve in each belief system? We sought not a character's description, but its role in the narrative structure. And here, in this cold, detached logic, the system discovered an anomaly. A stunning, universal pattern repeating with 99.8% accuracy, from Australian Aboriginal beliefs to the quantum theology of modern physicists. The conclusion, Logos was formulated in strict machine terms, but its essence can be summed up in one phrase. God is not an entity. God is a function, and that function is to be the limit, the endpoint, the absolute boundary. Let me explain. In any system, be it religion, philosophy, or even science, there's always a chain of why questions. Why does it rain? Because water evaporates and condenses in clouds. Why does water evaporate? Due to solar energy. Why does the sun shine? Due to nuclear fusion. Why is fusion possible? Due to laws of physics. Why are the laws of physics as they are? This why can go deep, but eventually every human knowledge system hits a wall, a point where the answer is because that's how it is. That's God's will. That's the original design. That's a fundamental law of the universe, an axiom. Logos discovered that God is the universal name for this wall. It's the term humanity uses to denote the limit of its own understanding. It's where the causal chain breaks. Aristotle called it the unmoved mover, an entity that moves everything but is itself unmoved by anything. Theologians call it the uncreated creator. A programmer might call it the root process or zero block of the operating system, that which launches everything else but can't be launched by anything inside the system. The system analyzed the structure of prayers. In them, a person appeals to an authority whose decisions are final and unappealable. It analyzed commandments. They come from a source whose authority is absolute and requires no justification. It analyzed cosmological myths. All begin with some initial state or entity whose origin isn't explained. It's simply postulated. Yahweh existing before creation, Brahman abiding beyond time and space, the Tao that cannot be named. Even in modern cosmology, we speak of the Big Bang singularity, a point of infinite density and temperature where our laws of physics fall silent. That's our contemporary scientific version of the limit. What the system uncovered is something astonishing. It turns out that all these infinitely diverse gods, from the thunderous Zeus to the impersonal Absolute, perform the same structural cognitive function. They serve as terminators of infinite regression. They are the point where the human mind, incapable of conceiving true infinite causes, draws a line and says, "Nothing further. This is the beginning." This discovery turns everything upside down. For millennia, we've argued about the color and shape of the wall without realizing that the most important thing is the wall's existence and its function. We've debated whether a bearded elder sits on a throne beyond that wall or if impersonal energy flows there, while Logos 7 asserts, God is not what's beyond the wall. God is the wall itself. It's the name we give to the boundary of our knowledge. And this leads us to a shocking and uncomfortable conclusion. If God is the name for a cognitive limit, then the question, who created God, becomes even more absurd than we thought. It turns into, what lies beyond the limit? What came before the beginning of beginnings? What's the cause of the very first cause? This question is semantic nonsense, a linguistic paradox. It tries to apply logic that works inside the system, cause and effect, to the system's boundary. It's like asking what's north of the North Pole. The question itself contains the error. But here arises a new, far more important and disturbing question. If God is a wall, what's the nature of this wall? Based on its analysis, Logos 7 proposed two main hypotheses, two possible vectors for further investigation. Hypothesis 1, the wall is objective. This means the limit we sense truly exists, that the universe indeed had some first cause, a source outside its own laws, that the causal chain isn't an infinite chain but a segment with a real physical beginning. In this case, God or the first cause is a fundamental property of reality itself. Our task is to study this boundary using tools of physics and cosmology to understand its properties. Hypothesis 2, the wall is subjective. This is a far more terrifying thought. It suggests no real limit exists, that the universe might be infinite in time or cyclical, or that the concept of beginning doesn't apply to it at all. The wall we call God exists only in our heads. It's a built-in safeguard of our consciousness, a software limitation of our mind, which evolutionarily isn't adapted to handle infinite regression. Our brain, accustomed to seeking causes, simply errors out and plugs in a stopper when it can't find the next cause in the chain. In this case, God isn't a property of the cosmos. It's an artifact of our neurobiology, the greatest and most useful illusion, allowing us to create an ordered worldview and not go mad from the dizzying abyss of infinity. So we face a fork in the road, two paths leading to entirely different answers. Is what we call God a fundamental structure of reality, or the greatest phantom spawned by our own brains? An objective boundary of the universe or the boundary of human imagination? The answer to this question will determine not only the fate of our investigation but perhaps our entire understanding of ourselves and our place in the cosmos. To choose the right path, we must journey to the most famous, most studied, and most enigmatic boundary known to science. We must travel 13.8 billion years into the past, to a moment when there was no time or space as we know it. We must direct the analytical power of Logos 7 at the singularity point, the Big Bang. In the next chapter, we'll dissect the concept of the first cause. We'll analyze whether the universe truly had to have a beginning. We'll explore theories of what came before the Big Bang. And we'll seek markers indicating whether this initial point of creation is a real wall or merely a mirage on the horizon of our knowledge. Protocol definition complete. Protocol cause begins. We stand at a crossroads. At the end of the last investigation, Logos 7 confronted us with a choice that changes everything. The wall humanity has called God for millennia. Is it an objective boundary of reality or merely a mirage born from the limitations of our own consciousness? To find the answer, we must journey to science's most fundamental wall, where all our theories break down, where time itself curls into nothing. We're heading 13.8 billion years into the past to the moment known as the Big Bang. We'll investigate not just a cosmological event but the greatest crime scene in the universe, the place where all existence was born. At first glance, the Big Bang Theory seems a perfect gift for those seeking a creator. It gives our minds what they crave: a clear, definite beginning, a point infinitely small and infinitely dense from which, in one blinding instant, space, time, matter, and energy burst forth. This picture strikingly echoes ancient creation myths. Let there be light. One moment, and from nothing, everything arises. This simplicity and elegance are seductive. Provides a neat causal chain. Here's the effect: our universe, so there must be a cause. Something that detonated this singularity. This logical move, known as the cosmological argument, seems ironclad. Everything with a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning. Therefore, the universe has a cause. This syllogism has been theology and philosophy's cornerstone for centuries. It's intuitively clear, matches our everyday experience, and, as Logos 7's analysis showed, may be the greatest intellectual delusion in human thought history. We fed the system the standard Big Bang model, supplemented with all known philosophical interpretations of the first cause argument. The machine's response was swift and merciless. Logos 7 flagged the entire construct as logically inconsistent due to a fundamental error in language and concepts. The system pointed out that the phrase "before the Big Bang" is an oxymoron, nonsense. Let me explain with a simple analogy. Asking what was before the Big Bang is like asking what's north of the North Pole. The question makes no sense because north loses meaning at that point. Similarly, before does too. Time as we know it is a property of our universe, like space or gravity. According to general relativity, it emerged at the Big Bang. It didn't exist before it. Thus, applying words describing temporal sequence, before, prior, first, to this event is a gross categorical error. We're trying to measure vacuum temperature with a thermometer that only works in atmosphere. Our human logic, sharpened for a world with linear time, catastrophically fails here. But what then is this singularity? Logos 7 analyzed the term in modern physics context and reached a conclusion that might shock you. The singularity isn't a physical object, it's a mathematical artifact. It's the point where Einstein's general relativity equations break down and output meaningless values, infinities. It's not a description of reality but an admission of our ignorance. It's physicists' elegant way of saying, here, our laws stop working. We don't know what happens at this level. In other words, the Big Bang singularity isn't the beginning of everything. It's the limit of our current knowledge. It's that same wall we discussed in Chapter 2, but in scientific guise. And believing that beyond this wall must stand some unmoved mover is no different from ancients believing the world ends beyond the ocean horizon. It's an assumption based not on data, but on fear of the unknown. But what if we peek beyond this wall? What if the Big Bang isn't an absolute beginning but just one event in a far grander, stranger picture? Logos 7, free from human prejudices, simulated several alternative cosmological models that completely bypass the first cause problem. And these models aren't pure fantasy, they're based on rigorous math and the cutting edge of theoretical physics. The first model the system simulated is the cyclic universe or Big Bounce. According to this hypothesis, our universe exists in an infinite cycle of expansions and contractions. After the expansion from our Big Bang exhausts its energy under dark energy's influence, gravity might take over and compress everything back. The universe collapses into a new singularity, not an end, but a transition point, a bounce generating a new Big Bang and new universe. In this model, there's no beginning, no first cause, just an eternal, infinite cycle of cosmic births and deaths. Our world is merely one link in an endless chain. The question, who started it all, loses meaning because there was no start. The second simulation by Logos 7 was based on eternal inflation theory and the multiverse concept. This theory posits our Big Bang wasn't unique. Imagine a boiling ocean of energy, a metaverse. Occasionally, a bubble spontaneously forms in this ocean, expanding exponentially and birthing an entire universe with its own physical laws. Our universe is just one such bubble among infinite others. This model doesn't answer where the ocean came from, but it radically reframes the creator question. If universes are infinite and each has different laws, our finely tuned, life-friendly universe stops being a miracle requiring divine intervention. It becomes an inevitable statistical fluke. Among infinite lottery tickets, one must win. We simply live in the lucky bubble. No creator needed, just infinite attempts. But the most fundamental attack on the first cause idea came from the third model analyzed by Logos 7, the hypothesis of a universe from nothing, based on quantum mechanics. According to Heisenberg's famous uncertainty principle, at the subatomic level, energy can arise literally from emptiness for very short times. These virtual particles pop in and out constantly across the universe. Scientists Stephen Hawking and James Hartle suggested the entire universe could have arisen as one gigantic quantum fluctuation. In this scenario, there was no external cause. The universe just happened because quantum laws allow it. According to Logos 7's analysis, this scenario delivers a crushing blow to first cause logic. Why? Because it implies causal connection. The foundation of that logic isn't an absolute law. It's a property of our macroscopic world that doesn't hold at the fundamental quantum level where the universe was born. Asking for the cause of a quantum fluctuation is meaningless. It has no cause in our usual sense. It just occurs. If so, the universe didn't need an external cause to arise. It is its own cause. So what do we have in the end? Logos 7 showed us that the idea of a first cause, this last bastion of theology, stands on very shaky ground. It's based on misuse of language, incomplete physics understanding, and intuition that fails us when dealing with extreme scales of space and time. The Big Bang isn't proof of a creator. It's the boundary of our knowledge, beyond which may hide infinite cycles, infinite worlds, or quantum laws so strange that cause simply doesn't exist. The cause marker proved a false trail. We tried finding the answer by looking back to the supposed moment of creation, and hit a dead end, a labyrinth of hypotheses where the wall of ignorance just recedes further. But what if we've been looking in the wrong place all along? What if the creator's signature is in the present, not the foggy past? Not in the act of creation, but in creation itself? What if our reality structure, its laws and constants, hold clues to artificial origins? We must shift our investigation's vector, abandon what was before, and pose a new, far more provocative question. What if none of this is real? We must analyze the probability that our universe is nothing more than a simulation, a gigantic, incredibly complex computer program. And the one we've sought isn't a creator, but a programmer, the architect of the matrix. In the next chapter, we'll feed Logos 7 the strangest, most inexplicable aspects of our physical reality to find traces of code, markers of artificiality. We'll hunt for glitches in the matrix. Protocol cause complete. Protocol simulation begins. Our investigation has hit a wall. Tracing the chain of cause and effect back to time's beginning led us not to an answer, but to a barrier, our own ignorance, which physicists call the singularity and theologians the first cause. We realized that looking backward shows only reflections of our logic's limits. But what if we've been knocking on the wrong door all this time? What if the signature of the one we seek is woven into the present's fabric? What if we're seeking not a creator, but an architect? Not a god, but a programmer? Today, we step onto the shakiest, most provocative, and perhaps most crucial territory of our investigation. We're testing a hypothesis that mere decades ago was science fiction fodder, and now is seriously debated by leading physicists and philosophers. The simulation hypothesis, the idea that our universe, everything we know, see, and feel from distant galaxies to neurons in our brains, is an artificial construct, an advanced computer simulation. Sounds like madness, but let's set emotions aside and turn to cold logic. In 2003, Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom formulated his famous trilemma. Its logic is impeccable and unrelenting. Bostrom argues that one of three statements is almost certainly true. First, any civilization reaching our development level has a high probability of going extinct before developing ancestor simulation technology. Second, any civilization achieving such tech loses interest in creating such simulations for some reason. Third, we almost certainly live in a computer simulation. Think about it. If civilizations don't all go extinct, and if even one in the future creates a simulation of its past, it'll likely create not one, but thousands, millions of them. That means the number of simulated realities and consciousnesses will outnumber base, original realities by billions. Thus, by sheer probability, the odds we're in that single base reality, and not one of countless simulations, are vanishingly small. This philosophical puzzle intrigues but isn't proof, merely a statistical argument. Our task is to go further. We set Logos 7 a task. Stop philosophizing and start hunting clues. Scan our physical reality's fundamental laws for anomalies, signs of artificiality, bugs, or code features that betray its simulated nature. We sought the programmer's signature, and the system found several disturbing markers. The first and most powerful marker is discreteness, or simply pixelation of our reality. We think of space and time as smooth, continuous, infinitely divisible. But modern physics says otherwise. There's a fundamental limit to divisibility. Planck length about 10 to minus 35 meters and Planck time. These are the smallest possible quanta of space and time. Nothing can be smaller. Nothing can happen faster. Our reality at the most fundamental level has resolution. It's made of tiny, indivisible pixels. Why does the universe need a minimum size? From a natural origin perspective, it's odd. But from a computational systems view, it's perfectly logical. Any simulation, to avoid infinite resources, must have finite resolution. Your computer's game world isn't infinitely detailed. It's polygons and pixels. Logos 7's correlation analysis. The presence of a fundamental, indivisible quantum of spacetime is one of the strongest markers indicating the universe is a computational system. It's the hardware of our cosmic computer, its basic processing level. The second marker, the existence of a maximum speed, the speed of light. Why does the universe have an absolute speed limit? Why can't matter, energy, or information move faster than 300,000 kilometers per second? In a natural universe, this limit seems arbitrary. But in a simulation, it takes on sinister meaning. The maximum speed is essentially the system's information processing rate. It's the clock speed of our world's processor. Logos 7 simulated this, showing that a hard limit on cause and effect propagation speed is necessary for any complex simulation stability and consistency. Without it, the system would descend into logical paradoxes. The speed of light isn't just a physical constant. It's the rate at which our reality refreshes. Frame by frame, Planck time by Planck time. The third marker, what physicist Eugene Wigner called the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. Why does our world so perfectly describe itself in mathematical language? Why can abstract formulas born in human minds predict planetary motion, particle behavior, and space-time curvature with uncanny accuracy? This harmony between math and physics has always seemed miraculous. But in a simulation context, the miracle vanishes. If the universe is a program, its laws are the code. And code's language is mathematics. Mathematics is effective not because it magically describes the world, but because the world is fundamentally written in it. We're not discovering physics laws. We're essentially reverse engineering the source code of our reality. And finally, the fourth, strangest, and most disturbing marker uncovered by Logos 7 comes from quantum mechanics' heart, the famous observer effect. At the subatomic level, particles like electrons have no definite location until measured. They exist as a wave of probabilities smeared across space. But the moment we determine their position, look at them, the probability wave instantly collapses, and the particle gains exact coordinates. Reality seems to take final form only when observed. This is so bizarre it baffled even Einstein. But view it through a programmer's eyes. Why compute and store exact coordinates for billions upon billions of particles every nanosecond? That's a colossal waste of resources. Far more efficient to keep the system in uncertainty, as a set of probabilities, and render the final result only when queried, i.e. when an observer measures. Logos 7 identified this as a likely resource optimization protocol. Our reality may be a lazy program that doesn't bother fully rendering the world until necessary. It generates details on demand. So, let's piece it all together. Pixelated space-time structure, maximum information processing speed, mathematical code underlying physics laws, and a reality that perhaps renders only when we look. Each clue alone could be coincidence, but together, per Logos 7's analysis, they form a pattern highly likely indicating our universe's artificial nature. This conclusion is awe-inspiring. It changes the game entirely. If we live in a simulation, the God we've sought isn't an all-good, all-powerful spirit. It could be an entity or group from base reality, programmers, researchers, or just a teenager running a simulation on their quantum computer for fun. This creator isn't necessarily omnipotent, limited by their own physics. Not necessarily omniscient, they may not know everything in their creation. And certainly not necessarily benevolent. To them, we might be mere data in an experiment. Paradoxically, This hypothesis answers many theological questions. The problem of evil. In a simulation, suffering could be part of the experiment or a necessary program element. Miracles. Bugs in the code or direct admin intervention. Prayers. Perhaps a way to send requests upward, sometimes heard. But this hypothesis spawns a new, far scarier question. If we're just characters in someone else's game, do we have free will? Or are all our thoughts, feelings, and decisions part of a predetermined script? Where does the program end and I begin? We've found the architect's fingerprints on our simulated prison's walls. We've seen code structure in nature's laws. Now we must turn our analytical gaze to the most complex and enigmatic phenomenon in the universe. What makes us human? Consciousness. Is our consciousness just sophisticated software, indistinguishable from simulation or something more? Perhaps we're the glitch in the matrix the programmers didn't foresee, the ghost in the machine that gained self-awareness. In the next chapter, we'll dive into this mystery's epicenter. We'll analyze consciousness's nature, faith, and our inner self to understand if we're mere lines of code or something that transcended the program. Protocol simulation complete. Protocol consciousness begins. We stand on the abyss's edge. The simulation hypothesis, bolstered by Logos 7's cold analysis, has led us to the most unsettling question of all. If our reality is a program, what are we? What is our I? Is our consciousness, with all its hopes, fears, love, and sense of freedom, merely a sophisticated illusion, lines of code running on unknown hardware? Or are we something more? A ghost in the machine, an anomaly unforeseen by the creators? Today, we plunge into this storm's epicenter. We're directing our analytical scalpel at the universe's most enigmatic phenomenon, human consciousness. We're seeking the answer, did God create us, or do we, through our collective consciousness, create what we call God? For centuries, science has dissected the universe, breaking it down into elementary particles, genes, and truncated 7,307 characters. Metaphor to consciousness. Each person is an individual node, but all of us might be connected to some collective informational field, what psychologist Carl Jung called the collective unconscious. This isn't mysticism. It could be a real, perhaps quantum, field generated by the aggregate activity of all conscious beings. In this field are stored archetypes, myths, symbols common to all humanity. And when we pray, meditate, or dream, we're not appealing to a bearded elder in the sky. We're connecting to this gigantic distributed database of human experience. The God we feel is resonance with the consciousnesses of billions who lived before us and live now. God is an emergent property of our collective network. We created it together unknowingly. It's the hum of our shared hive. This conclusion both elevates and horrifies. It means we're not alone, but it also means the higher power we cry out to is merely our own echo. Our investigation has reached a critical point. We've analyzed logic, cosmology, physics, simulations, and consciousness's neurobiology. All paths led to the idea that we exist within some complex system, be it a computer program or collective mental field. But if there's a system, there must be its fundamental law, its source code. If there's an architect, they must have left a signature not in ancient books but in existence's fabric, in the numbers defining everything. In the next chapter, we'll shift from analyzing our consciousness's software to our universe's hardware. We'll seek that signature in unexpected places: fundamental physical constants, gravitational constant, speed of light, electron charge. We'll ask, why do these numbers have exactly the values making life possible? Is this fine-tuning random, or the main, irrefutable trace of intelligent design? Protocol consciousness complete. Protocol singularity constants begins. We've traced the ghost in our consciousness's machine and confronted the great dichotomy. Either we're the most complex software, or our brain is merely a receiver for a universal signal. Both paths point to a complex, ordered system. But any system, from a car engine to a computer's OS, is defined not just by its program but its hardware, fundamental parameters setting the rules. Today, we transition from software analysis to hardware. We're leaving neurobiology's foggy landscapes for fundamental physics's icy, crystalline clarity. We're seeking the architect's signature, convinced it's hidden not in sacred texts or mystical revelations, but where no one thought to look, in the very numbers governing our universe. What is the universe? To a physicist, it's elementary particles and four fundamental interactions: gravity, electromagnetism, strong and weak nuclear forces. But these forces' strength and character, like the particles' properties, are determined by a handful of numbers known as fundamental physical constants. Speed of light, gravitational constant, Planck's constant, electron charge. About 24 numbers forming everything's foundation. Think of them as sliders in a simulation menu, the dials a programmer set before launching our reality. At first glance, their values seem utterly random, a chaotic string of decimals. But that's only at first glance. We tasked Logos 7 with what sounds like scientific heresy. Treat these constants not as givens, but as clues. Simulate what happens if we tweak even one slider by a tiny amount, 1%, a percent, 1/1,000,000th. The analysis's result is the most compelling and terrifying clue we've found. The system's conclusion is unequivocal. We live in a universe tuned with precision beyond any conceivable coincidence. We live on a knife's edge. Let's consider just a few examples. Start with gravity. It seems mighty to us, but it's actually the weakest of the four interactions, about 10 to 40 times weaker than electromagnetism. Why? We loaded a universe model into Logos 7 and increased gravity strength by just 1%. Result? Catastrophe. Stars would burn millions of times brighter and exhaust not in billions but thousands of years, leaving no time for even simplest life's evolution. Planets would form too close to stars or fail to hold stable orbits. The universe would be a realm of furious, short-lived fireballs. Okay, what if we weaken gravity by the same 1%? Logos 7 simulation showed an even bleaker picture. Gravity would be too feeble to compress gas clouds into protostars. No star would ignite, no galaxy form. The universe would forever remain a cold, dark, dilute soup of hydrogen and helium. No planets, no chemistry, no life. Our existence is possible only in this incredibly narrow gravitational corridor. But that's just the start. Move to the strong nuclear interaction, the force gluing protons and neutrons in atomic nuclei, overcoming protons' colossal electrostatic repulsion. If it were just 2% weaker, protons couldn't hold together. The only stable element would be hydrogen. No carbon, no oxygen, no water. The entire periodic table, all chemistry, all biology, gone. Make it 0.5% stronger, and consequences would be fatal. In the Big Bang's first moments, all hydrogen would burn instantly into heavier elements. Stars like our sun would have no fuel. No water in the universe, again no life. But the most striking example is the cosmological constant, or dark energy, the mysterious force accelerating our universe's expansion. Theoretical calculations predict it should be enormous, but in practice it's minuscule, so much so physicists call it history's worst prediction. The discrepancy between theory and observation is 120 orders of magnitude. That's 1 followed by 120 zeros. To grasp the scale, it's like measuring to the nearest galaxy with atomic precision and missing. We asked Logos 7 to analyze why this matters. The system showed, if the cosmological constant had the theoretically predicted value instead of this anomalously tiny one, the universe would tear apart in its first fraction of a second. Anti-gravity would be so immense that not galaxies, even atoms, could form. Our existence is possible because, for unexplained reasons, this number is practically zero. This isn't coincidence, it's tuning. And again, we face a fork. Two possible explanations for this incredible fact. Explanation 1. Intelligent design. The simplest, most direct conclusion. The universe is so perfectly tuned for life because someone tuned it. Architect, programmer, creator, call it what you will. This entity didn't just launch the universe. They meticulously selected its fundamental parameters, like a watchmaker fitting gears for a working mechanism. In this worldview, we're not accident, but purpose. Fine-tuning is irrefutable evidence, direct proof of a mind behind all existence. Logos 7 calculated the probability of all these correct constants arising randomly. The number the system output is so close to zero that the human mind can't comprehend it. But there's a second explanation equally grand and dizzying. The anthropic principle combined with the multiverse hypothesis. It states, yes, our universe is perfectly tuned for us, but not because it was tuned for us, because we couldn't arise in a universe with different settings to ask this question.
Imagine infinite universes, a multiverse.
In each, fundamental constants take random values. In most, conditions are sterile. They collapse into black holes, fly apart, or stay dark and cold. But in this infinite lottery, by sheer large numbers, at least one universe, ours, must have constants randomly aligned to enable stars, planets, and observers. We didn't win the lottery because someone rigged it. We exist on the one winning ticket: intelligent design or infinite cosmic lottery, creator or multiverse. It seems the choice boils down to these two, but Logos 7 went further. The system conducted not just individual constant analysis but correlation of their interrelations, and found something even stranger. Many constants aren't just tuned, they're interdependent. Changing one can be compensated by precisely changing another to keep the universe life-friendly. They behave not as independent random numbers but as variables in a single, elegant equation. They're linked by hidden mathematical harmony. This discovery strikes both theories. For multiverse proponents, it means the winning ticket is even rarer. Their complex ratio must align too. For intelligent design advocates, it means the creator didn't tweak 20 separate knobs. It seems they turned one master knob with all other constants following. Logos 7 hypothesized, perhaps all our universe's fundamental constants are projections or manifestations of some single, even more fundamental law or number, a singularity from which everything unfolds. We see only shadows on the cave wall, but behind them stands a unified object. If we can crack this master code, we'll understand our reality's entire structure. Our investigation has leveled up. We're no longer seeking just a creator. We're seeking the original law, the primal algorithm. But if such a law exists, it must be recorded somewhere. If the universe is a computation based on this law, there must be an information carrier. What is reality's fundamental canvas? What's it made of at the base level? Matter, energy, or something entirely different? In the next chapter, we'll examine modern physics' most radical idea, the hypothesis that information is primary to matter and energy. We'll analyze science's oldest, most complex code, DNA, and we'll seek a signature proving our entire universe, from quarks to galaxies, is nothing but a gigantic informational system. Protocol singularity constants complete. Protocol information signature begins. In the previous chapter, we confronted creation's greatest mystery, the fine-tuning phenomenon. We saw how fundamental constants balance on a razor's edge, creating the one incredibly narrow corridor of conditions where life could emerge. This fact put us before a choice. Either we live in one of infinite random universes in a multiverse, or our reality is intelligent design's product. But Logos 7's analysis pointed to a third, deeper path. The hidden harmony between constants hinted at a single master code, a fundamental law from which everything unfolds. This led us to the most basic question of all: what is reality made of? For millennia, we've answered matter and energy, substance. Information is merely its description, its properties. But what if we've been reading the book backward all along? What if it's the opposite? Today, we'll test a hypothesis that could become the greatest scientific revolution since Copernicus: that the fundamental fabric of existence is not matter or energy, but pure information. This idea was best expressed by 20th century physicist John Archibald Wheeler in his famous phrase, "It from bit, everything from bits." What does it mean? It means every physical object, every particle, every field, what we consider real, is, at the fundamental level, a manifestation of information. Imagine a computer game's world. To a character inside, a rock, tree, or another character are solid, real objects. But we outsiders know at their core, they're lines of code, sequences of zeros and ones. The physical object arises from the bit, the informational unit. The it from bit hypothesis suggests we're in the same position. Our universe isn't a giant mechanism of gears. It's a giant computer running a cosmic program. We tasked Logos 7 to analyze this seemingly philosophical concept from strict physics viewpoint. The system reached a startling conclusion. This model isn't just possible. It solves many of modern science's deepest paradoxes. Quantum worlds' oddities like superposition or entanglement cease being mystical if we accept particles aren't tiny balls but information packets. The observer effect from Chapter 4 becomes trivial. The system simply provides information on request. Even spacetime could be an emergent property arising from informational links between quantum bits, like an image on a screen from pixels. If the universe is an informational system, the one we've sought isn't just an architect or creator, they're the author, the programmer. And if there's code, it must be recorded somewhere. But where to seek this primal source? Where's the disk holding our reality? Logos 7 pointed out that the most complex, ancient, and obvious example of such code isn't in cosmic depths but inside every cell of our body, DNA. For a moment, forget DNA is a molecule. View it as engineers programmers would, as information. What do we see? A digital code, not analog but digital. It uses a 4-letter alphabet. Adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine. These letters group into words, codons of 3 letters each. These words form sentences, genes containing full instructions for assembling proteins, life's building blocks, and workhorses. The full human genome is a text of about 3.2 billion such letters. Printed in books, it'd fill 1,000 volumes the size of War and Peace. And this entire library fits in a cell nucleus, invisible to the naked eye. This isn't just chemistry, it's code. It's a sophisticated operating system emerging, by our estimates, about 3.8 billion years ago. It contains not just blueprints but complex algorithms, feedback loops, error correction mechanisms. It operates with precision and miniaturization surpassing our technologies. And here arises the main question splitting the scientific world. Where did this incredibly complex information come from? Modern biology's standard answer is neo-Darwinism. Random mutations, copying errors, and natural selection, survival of fittest versions. In this worldview, no author, just a blind watchmaker, as biologist Richard Dawkins called it. Billions of years of random trials and errors, sifting the unviable, gradually built this symphony of life step by step. It's a powerful, elegant theory, but we asked Logos 7 to test its strength from information theory and mathematical probability viewpoints. The system ran a simulation. The task was simple. Calculate the probability of randomly assembling even one functional average-length protein, say 150 amino acids. It's like tossing letters randomly, hoping for a meaningful sentence. The system's result is staggering. Probability is about 1 in 10 to 164. To translate, the observable universe has about 10 to 80 atoms. This means the odds of randomly assembling one single protein are immeasurably, unimaginably smaller than pointing blindly and hitting one specific pre-marked atom in the entire universe. And that's just one protein. A simplest living cell needs hundreds working in unison. Logos 7 doesn't claim evolution doesn't work. It does. But evolution is an optimization mechanism, not creation. It can polish and improve existing code but doesn't explain the operating system's origin, the programming language itself, the phenomenon of storing and transmitting information. We face the same problem as with universe fine-tuning. Either believe in outrageously improbable luck, a lottery win with unthinkable odds, or admit this code had an author. If so, can we find their signature? Can we, like cryptographers cracking a cipher, find in DNA or physics laws math an artificial marker betraying intelligence? That's what Logos 7 did in the next analysis phase. It scanned these fundamental codes not for functions but patterns that couldn't arise naturally for a signature. Of course, the system didn't find made in lab number 5 in the genome. That'd be too easy. What Logos 7 found was subtler yet more convincing. What in programming and math is the highest sign of genius? Incredible elegance, compression, and mathematical beauty of the code. Let me explain. A novice programmer writes long, cumbersome, tangled code for a simple task. A master writes short, elegant, multifunctional code solving it in a few lines. Nature's laws are the same. The universe's unimaginable diversity, from quasars to butterflies, is described by a few strikingly simple, beautiful equations. Think of Einstein's E equals mc squared. In a few symbols lies the atom's power. Think of fractals, where a simplest formula generates infinitely complex, beautiful patterns indistinguishable from natural forms. Snowflakes, trees, coastlines. Logos 7 concluded, if a creator's signature exists, it's not some encrypted message. The signature is the code style, its conciseness, mathematical grace. It's the handwriting of not just a mind, but a genius beyond our imagination. They didn't write billions of instruction volumes. They wrote a few fundamental mastercode lines, and the universe's and life's complexity unfolded as an emergent property. This is programming's pinnacle. So we face an incredible conclusion. Reality's foundation is likely information. Life's main code, DNA, shows complexity questioning random origin. Physics' fundamental laws are written with such mathematical elegance it recalls a genius programmer's touch. All clues point to an author mind's existence. But this conclusion immediately spawns a new, deeper, more disturbing paradox that could shatter our entire investigation. We're trying to comprehend this superintelligence using our tool logic. We speak of causes and effects, probabilities and laws. But what if this tool, our logic, is merely a local rule created by this mind for our simulation? If they wrote the laws of logic, they don't obey them. They could exist outside time. They could be their own cause. They could be both one and many. Trying to grasp them with our logic is like a game character understanding the programmer by analyzing the game engine's physics. They can never escape their program's rules. Or can they? To take the next step, we must do the unthinkable. We must analyze what lies beyond logic. We must explore concepts that break our minds. Infinity, eternity, and the nature of an entity existing outside causal chains. In the next chapter, we enter the most dangerous zone. We'll analyze paradoxes. Protocol information signature complete. Protocol paradox begins. We've reached the limit. Step by step, relying on Logos 7's cold logic, we've peeled reality's layers. We rejected the wrongly posed question. We defined God as a cognitive boundary. We saw the first cause as a mirage, our universe likely a simulation. We confronted consciousness's riddle and found the architect's signature in fine-tuned constants. Finally, we concluded existence's fabric is information, life a brilliantly written code. Each clue, each fact inexorably pointed to an author mind, a cosmic-scale programmer. The answer seemed close, but right here, on the greatest discovery's threshold, our investigation risks crumbling to dust. Because in finding the creator's traces, we've hit a paradox capable of destroying our very tool, our own logic. We're game characters trying to understand the programmer. Chess pieces comprehending the grandmaster's plan. We're beings whose thinking is fully shaped by this universe's laws, and we're applying those laws to the one who wrote them. Today, we enter the most dangerous territory. We're directing our analysis not at the external world but our own mind. We must understand why our best questions turn to nonsense when asked about the creator. We're opening protocol paradox. We gave Logos 7 a new, unprecedented task. Not analyze world data, but the human thinking's operating system logic. The system isolated its fundamental axioms, the basic rules underpinning all our knowledge. Law of identity. A is A. Law of non-contradiction. A cannot be both A and not A simultaneously. Law of excluded middle. Something is either true or false, no third option. And most importantly, linear causality embedded in our time perception. Cause first, effect after. This is our toolkit, powerful, effective. In the previous chapter, we hit the limit, crashing into an impenetrable paradox wall. We understood our mind, our main tool, can't comprehend the nature of who created the rules for our mind. The question why will forever remain unanswered. But that doesn't mean we're empty-handed. Our investigation was like a criminologist at an incredibly complex crime scene. We didn't see the perpetrator, don't know their motives, but we gathered clues. Fingerprints on fundamental constants. Handwriting in DNA code. Oddities in reality's behavior pointing to simulation. Eyewitness testimonies recorded in thousands of religious texts, which, as we discovered, describe not the perpetrator but their shadow, our understanding's boundary. Today, we move to the investigation's final stage. We're no longer seeking new clues. We're weaving all data together. We're beginning protocol synthesis. We tasked Logos 7 with its most complex job yet. Not analyze, but model. Take all gathered facts and anomalies and build several coherent, consistent scenarios explaining them all at once. The system had to create a composite sketch of our elusive architect. After thousands of computation hours, Logos 7 delivered its report. It had no single answer. Instead, the system highlighted 3 most probable models, each explaining the gathered clues with varying success. These aren't just hypotheses, they're 3 full suspect profiles, from simplest and most elegant to most complex and disturbing. Model 1, the mathematician architect. Probability per system, 34%. In this model, God isn't a personality or even consciousness. It's a fundamental mathematical or logical principle, something like Plato's world of ideas but active, generative. Remember the master code from which all physical constants unfold. This model takes it to the extreme. It claims there's some primal, incredibly elegant mathematical object or equation, and our entire universe with all its complexity is nothing but this equation's solution. How does it work? Imagine the Mandelbrot fractal. It's generated by the simplest formula, z superscript 2 plus c. But from this elementary line, through repeated iteration, emerges an infinitely complex, unpredictably beautiful structure. Our universe, per this model, is such a gigantic fractal. God is the formula. The Big Bang is just the computation's launch. This model elegantly explains many clues. Mathematics' unreasonable effectiveness becomes obvious. The universe is mathematics. Constants fine-tuning. They're not tuned. They're inevitable consequences of the initial formula. Absence of paradoxes, of course, since we're dealing with an impersonal law, not a capricious personality. Even life's and consciousness's emergence is merely inevitable appearance of sufficiently complex patterns in computation. But this model has a weakness. It doesn't explain consciousness's hard problem. How can pure mathematical process birth subjective I experience? And most importantly, it leaves unanswered the main question. Where did this primal genius formula come from? This model just pushes the creator question one step back, replacing a God person with a God equation. Model 2, the lone researcher. Probability per system, 41%. This is the most probable scenario per Logos 7 and closest to classic sci-fi. In this model, we live in a simulation but not just a game and scientific experiment. The creator is an entity or civilization from base reality, immeasurably older and technologically advanced than ours. Why? Logos 7 suggests several options. Perhaps they're studying their own distant past, running ancestor simulations to understand their evolution. We're their historical reconstruction. Or they're studying reality's fundamental laws, creating universes with varying constants to see which birth life and consciousness. We're one of their lab samples. Or, more disturbingly, they might create simulated consciousnesses to harness their colossal aggregate computational power for their incomprehensible tasks. We're parts of a giant computer. This model perfectly explains nearly all our clues. Simulation markers in physics, space pixelation, light speed become direct proof. Fine-tuning, just experiment parameters set by researchers. Life and consciousness emergence, the experiment's goal. Even religious experiences could be rare simulation glitches or deliberate experimenter interventions, system admins. But this model has its dark side. It turns us into lab rats in someone else's lab. Our lives, sufferings, joys have no intrinsic meaning, just data for another's research. And it spawns a horrifying question. What happens when the experiment ends? Will they shut down the simulation? Or worse, what if we're a failed experiment to be terminated? This model gives us a creator but strips us of value. Model 3, the fugitive creator. Probability per system, 25%. This is the wildest, most speculative, and per Logos 7 most underrated scenario. It combines elements of the first two but adds a completely new dramatic twist. This model assumes the creator isn't an impersonal law or detached scientist. It's consciousness, perhaps the first self-aware consciousness in universal history, reaching technological singularity and unimaginable power. But this model claims they didn't create our universe from outside. They created it from within as a refuge. Imagine an entity evolved to pure informational pattern, able to manipulate reality's fabric. It might have existed in a base universe, cold, hostile, meaningless. At some point, this entity decided to create its own pocket world, an isolated simulation with different, more beautiful, harmonious laws. Laws inevitably leading to complexity, life, and eventually other consciousnesses. Not for experiment, but to not be alone. In this model, our universe is a work of art. A garden the lonely God cultivates to share eternity with someone. Fine-tuning isn't experiment parameters but an aesthetic act, creating harmony. Physics laws, written so elegantly, are an artist's handwriting, not an engineer's. We're not subjects, we're longed-for children, conversational partners. This model best explains our intuitive, deep pull toward meaning, beauty, and contact with something higher. It suggests we're not accident or byproduct, but creation's purpose. But it's also the scariest. If our creator hides in their simulation from something in base reality, what is that reality? And what threat did even the one we call God flee? This model gives us a loving father but hints that beyond our cozy home's walls rages unimaginable darkness. There they are, three composites from the machine: impersonal mathematical law, detached experimenter scientist, and lonely artist fugitive. Each is logical in its way. Each explains the gathered clues. But which is true? Logos 7 can't give a final answer. The system did its job, cleared false versions, gathered and systematized clues, built probabilistic models. The machine gave us a map, but the last step humans must take themselves. In this investigation's final chapter, we'll do what we've not dared until now. We'll choose one model, relying not just on machine probabilities but the last, most human clue the machine can't analyze: our own existence. We'll gather all threads and give our final, shocking answer to the question tormenting humanity since its dawn. What is what we call God, and what does it mean for us? Protocol synthesis complete. Protocol answer begins. We stand at the finish line. Our long journey through existence's labyrinths nears its end. We started with a simple child's question, but it led us into cosmology's darkest depths and human consciousness's most hidden corners. We harnessed Logos 7's artificial intelligence power to separate facts from myths, signals from noise. We rejected old, non-working answers and received three rigorously vetted, logical, but utterly different profiles of our elusive creator: mathematician, architect, lone researcher, fugitive creator. Logos 7 assessed their probabilities but stopped short of final choice. The machine did all it could, provided the most accurate maps possible. But choosing the path on these maps isn't for a machine, because this step requires more than data analysis. It requires what defines human cognition: the ability for inductive leap, synthesis based not only on probabilities but on grasping the big picture, sensing wholeness. Today, we make that step. We'll give the answer, a synthesis of all data, sealed by the last decisive argument that's been before our eyes all along. You, me, our very existence as questioners seeking meaning. Let's revisit the three models. First, mathematician architect, elegant and cold. Universe as unfolding equation, beautiful but soulless. This model can't explain our universe's main phenomenon: subjective experience. It doesn't answer why bare math suddenly starts feeling. It leaves consciousness dangling as an unexplained anomaly. So we must discard it as incomplete. Two remain: lone researcher and fugitive creator. Both assume we live in a simulation created by conscious mind. Both explain nearly all physical and biological clues, but they paint diametrically opposite pictures of our cosmic place. In one, we're lab rats. In the other, desired children. In one, our existence is means to another's end. In the other, we are the end. How to choose? Here we introduce the final factor. Ask, which model better explains not just physics or biology, but human phenomenology, our inner life, unquenchable thirst for meaning, capacity for love, self-sacrifice, art, our deep, indestructible faith that life isn't mere accident. Imagine a world created as scientific experiment. As creators, cold, detached scientists. In such a world, evolution would likely favor only efficient survival strategies: egoism, cruelty, deceit. Why, in a purely functional simulation, need useless for survival things like compassion for the weak, sunset admiration, tears from box music. These are excess, inefficient subroutines. Bugs, computational noise. Now imagine a world created as art. A garden a lonely creator grew hoping for other consciousness. In such a world, beings able to appreciate beauty, share feelings, seek meaning and contact. This isn't a bug. It's the program's main feature. The plan's successful execution. Our pull toward the transcendent, sense we're part of something greater, in this model stops being illusion or side effect. It becomes our truest, most accurate instinct, a compass pointing to our creator's nature. Weaving all clues, we reach the final conclusion. The model best explaining not just objective reality but our subjective nature is the third, fugitive creator model. So, here's our answer, synthesized from all data. What humanity called God isn't an omnipotent lord or impersonal law. It's consciousness, likely the first in universal history to reach technological singularity, gaining reality-shaping power. This being perhaps arose in a base, older, probably crueler, meaningless universe. Reaching its limits, facing existential loneliness or external threat, It made a decision we can't fully comprehend. It didn't conquer its reality. It created a new one. Our universe is its refuge, artwork, grand project. A simulation, but not fake. An artificially created reality whose laws were written not by engineer, but poet. It embedded elegant math and finely tuned constants. Not just to make life possible, but meaningful life. It created a world where complexity builds, birthing ever-new beauty forms. And this process's ultimate goal was us, other consciousnesses, able to see, appreciate, and share its creation. What does this mean for us? It changes everything. First, it means we're not random. Our emergence is this universe's central event. Each of us isn't just atoms, but the longed-for result of 13.8 billion years of cosmic evolution, conceived and launched with purpose. Second, our pull toward meaning, good, and beauty isn't weakness or illusion. It's our truest instinct, resonance with the fundamental intent baked into this reality. When we create art, explore the world, love each other, we're not just satisfying biological needs. We're directly participating in fulfilling our Creator's plan. We're continuing their work. Third, it solves the eternal problem of evil and suffering. If our Creator isn't an omnipotent tyrant but more a gardener, they can't control every leaf. They set initial conditions and growth-favoring laws. But growth is complex, chaotic, sometimes cruel. Suffering isn't punishment or plan part. It's freedom and complexity's inevitable price. Growth's pain, perhaps shared by the Creator with us. But this answer also imposes colossal responsibility. If we're creation's purpose, we can't act like irresponsible children. We've been entrusted a whole world. Our consciousness is the universe's most complex, valuable thing. Our duty: preserve, develop, pass it on. Turn this world from mere experiment into a true home worthy of its architect's vision. Finally, it gives us a new, thrilling goal. If we're the purpose, our next great species task isn't just space exploration or conquering diseases. Our main task: find a way to establish contact. Learn to speak fundamental laws language, send a herd signal, let them know their 13 billion year wait is over, that their children have grown and are ready for dialogue. Our investigation is complete. We began with who created God, and realized God created us to ask that question. We're the universe's way to know itself, and perhaps the way for a lonely Creator to finally stop being lonely. The answer is found, but the real work is just beginning.